Hey everybody, today we are doing another topic video, a random one, but we're talking about our favorite movies that take place in shopping malls or have like a shopping mall sequence in it. I don't know, I guess I've seen a lot of movies that fit that particular description lately, and I have always been really fascinated by movies like that. I don't know, I just think that shopping malls are inherently very cinematic. They typically stand for obviously this consumerist symbol, but it's also just a really fascinating place. It's where just everything is all in one place in this really unique way. I find the mall to be a very overwhelming place, but also a very fascinating place. I think it's like this very strange playground for the suburban folk, and an interesting environment to stage some variables that can really reveal a lot of things about humanity, I think. But yeah, so we'll just go ahead and start with the first one. It is Jackie Brown. I think it's Tarantino's most mature and nuanced film, while still being an entertaining homage to blaxploitation films. It's a balancing act that really pays off. The mall scenes have a certain energy and suspense to them that's missing in a lot of recent films. Absolutely. I think that Jackie Brown is probably, I don't know, maybe top 2, top 3 Tarantino films of all time for me. And it is something that I have to review, and I still haven't gotten to it. I promise I will. But yeah, I've talked about Jackie Brown a lot. I tend to really prefer Tarantino pre-Kill Bill. I prefer those types of movies. There's something about the nuance. There is, as you said, a maturity and a subtlety there, and a lot of the decisions by the characters and a lot of the plot points just feel a lot more authentic. And I just think a lot of the blaxploitation elements, a lot of the pastiche elements are just more cleverly interwoven in his 90s films compared to his later films. And I look at Jackie Brown, and I think naturally when you watch it, you see shades of like Kill Bill, what Kill Bill would eventually become. And yet I find Jackie Brown to be far more interesting. And yes, I think one of the great parts about it is, yes, it's a very long film, but that final act has that extraordinary, very, very tense building situation that takes place in the mall. And you're seeing it from multiple perspectives. And I just think the way that all of that is composed is absolutely brilliant. I think it is one of the more masterful things that I think Tarantino's ever done. There's just so many little things happening in that sequence. And again, it's slowly building, kind of adding layer upon layer upon layer in a way that I just find to be really fantastic. And that sequence in particular, I don't want to give away, but it has one of the best deaths, I think, in all of Tarantino movies as well. And that suit that she wears is absolutely fantastic, I think. I want it. So the next one is, okay, definitely Jackie Brown comes to mind, but also really liked Bertrand Bonillo's Nocturama. Saw it a long time ago, but was the first thing I thought of. Yeah, me too. And I was kind of sad because very few people mention Nocturama. That is one of my favorite films of the last decade for sure, if you watched that video I did a long time ago. But yeah, I'm absolutely astounded by Nocturama. It's just unlike any experience I've ever had at the movies. And yeah, it's a very skeletal, abstract type of masterpiece. And unfortunately, it is about a touchy subject in the world currently, but it's about terrorism, and particularly terrorism among the youths. And I think that's part of, yeah, why it didn't really gain much of an audience at the time. But I like the idea that this is a movie, again, about young people. It's about youths that are obviously in the modern culture, and they are wanting fame, but they don't want to suffer the consequences. They feel very compelled to like smash the system in all of these ways, and yet they don't seem to know why that's important to them, or it's not really explored in the film at all. And I think that's part of it. It's to feel very shallow by design. And yet it is dreamy, it's strange, and a lot of these characters are barely characters. Again, they are terrorists, and they are hiding out in a mall that is closed, knowing that of course they are eventually going to get caught. I think that's inevitable. But yeah, I mean, there's something really, really tragic about that, and the idea that all of these kids are like hiding out again in this chic department store, and it's like they can play all of these different parts. They can play house. They have all these different clothes and shoes, and they have furniture everywhere. And yet, again, it's like they know that they're pretty much not going to make it out of it. So it's like this whole experience in this place, it feels like gold dust slipping through their fingers. And again, just, the type of place that it is, it's very cinematic. I love like the staircase and everything. It's wonderful. There is a desperation to build like surface on top of surface on top of surface. And there is something, I think, kind of poetic about that in this particular film through the metaphor of, again, the mall, the department store. And the mannequins in this film are really, really, really creepy. And they reflect a sort of, I don't know, empty purgatory state for me. And there is a sequence in it where like the kid sees a ghost, but it's in the form of a mannequin. And yeah, like that stays with me all the time. So yeah, obviously the mall is highlighting consumerism in similar ways that other things do. And yet I think there is something more interesting about it. I think there are more layers in it, more elements of tragedy. Chopping Mall. It's an amazing 80s cult classic slasher film with a robot killer. The film is the embodiment of camp and has that cheesy 80s look and feel that makes it such an easy and hilarious watch. Yeah, I absolutely adore that film, and I totally agree with you fully. It is just quintessential 80s cheese. In a way, the setup is kind of like Nocturama, sort of, but it's like you have all these teenagers in a mall at night after it's closed, and they're there to party and fuck, and yet there are killer security robots on the loose. I mean, it's like, how could you not want to watch that, seriously? And I think this one has a lot of fun with the consumerist concept. I think there's a lot more comedy here, and there is a joy to it. Because it doesn't feel like it's trying to make some really grand point, I guess, in an elevated way. I think it kind of knows what it is, and it knows that a lot of the horror is a lot closer to our normal life than I think a lot of people are wanting to admit. And it just has some fun with it, and it knows exactly what it is, and yeah, it's schlocky fun. Great popcorn movie, great to get your friends together and just have fun. Dawn of the Dead, 1978. So much has been said about the social commentary, but what really makes the movie connect is how well Romero puts the audience into the situation. We can identify with those four characters, and unlike many horror movies, we actually care about them. This is what makes the satire so strong. We recognize that we would fall into the same traps the characters do. Absolutely. It's the fact that we can totally relate to those characters is what makes it work. And that's something that I feel is missing in a lot of horror movies, zombie movies like that these days. And I'm a huge fan of Night of the Living Dead as an example. But yeah, I think this film is a lot different. The commentary is a lot different. I think there's just like more of like a fun kind of entertaining energy about this one. But for me, I always found most interesting is kind of the humans and a lot of the decisions that they make in the midst of, you know, the world ending, basically. All of that is just really, really fascinating. It's like we are in survival mode, and yet their first instinct is to go for like all the luxury items, go for all of the things that are completely unnecessary, you know, for survival. I just think that's really interesting because human beings naturally are primal, just inherently, and yet we have kind of slowly been like tamed by civilization. And that's what the mall represents. It's a place where we have everything just right in front of us, and we don't have to work for anything like we might have had to do many, many years ago. So a lot of those primal instincts are whittled down, but they are always there. And so combining that with this civilized sort of mentality that we have, that is the really interesting thing to probe. And I think that Romero does it really brilliantly in this film. Observe and Report, funny comedy film. Love the cast, especially Seth Rogen, Ray Liotta, and the others. The scene of Seth Rogen fighting the cops and losing to Ray Liotta was my favorite comedy scene, and I always remembered it. That's an underrated movie. Oh my God, is it an underrated movie? I think it is one of the best comedies of like the last maybe 15 years. This is a movie I reviewed earlier this year, and nobody watched that review, and I'm not surprised at all because, yeah, like I said, this movie is it's not something you hear about a lot, and it's a movie that definitely is controversial to certain people. And it's one of those things I think you're either going to get it or you're not. It is a black comedy, but it has all these very strange, bizarre tonal shifts, and I think a lot of people don't quite know what to do with that. It is a Taxi Driver inspired piece, and it is a very nihilistic film about American life, except instead of it taking place in New York City, you know, with Travis Bickle here, it takes place in this really ghetto-ass mall. And there's something about, you know, these malls, even back then in 2009 when the movie came out, it's like they're barely, you know, held intact. All of them are going out of business. And yeah, there's just something kind of tragic about that. And I think there's a lot more tragedy inherently in this movie, surprisingly, compared to Taxi Driver. Or at least I should say, I find myself sometimes more emotionally engaged with this particular film, and I think part of it is because so much of the comedy in this is enhancing the irony. And even this taking place in a mall, it's just a lot of the characters and how pathetic they can be, all of that is really enhanced, I think, by that particular environment. And this is about a movie about all kinds of people just trying to matter. But yeah, I'm realizing there are a lot of movies that I could talk about, and you guys named some other ones, but yeah, I don't know. Let me know some ones that maybe I didn't mention as well here. But that is the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to plug my website. As always, it is deepfocuslens.com. I'm an artist. I do commission portraits and I sell prints of my work. If that is something that you're interested in, you can always go to the website below. And if you have a question about a commission or a print, you can always email me. My email is in the description box below as well. Also, I'd like to give a shout out to my patrons who are wonderful. Guys, thank you so much for your support. If you are interested in supporting, the link for that is below, as well as the rest of my social media information. You can watch more videos here, and you can subscribe if you'd like. Catch you next time.